Watch people coming through. The farmers, the wonderful jackals coming through in their wonderful dresses, and they would stop and have picnics. And there would be very few people, very few tourists in those days, cluttering the place up. Then in the evenings they would all come back. Some of the great bellas that take place here. I mean, it's a really fantastic space. But the space I always love is this one, because they use it much more for their drying their crops and what have you. Bit of bartering going on, and of course the very famous the Biscuit Festival, which is the New Year festival in Bhaktapur. And this is where the great battle takes place, where those of you who may have seen it, it really is very exciting. I used to have, because all my wood carvers came from Bhaktapur, they used to drag me over to Bhaktapur for the great festival, and they used to fill us up with rakshi and say, now, be careful because it's very dangerous, and it really used to be very, very exciting. And I'm told now, sadly, it's lost a lot of its charm. But anyway, the centerpiece is the chariot, which is left about here, and it's a question of who can drag it into their toll, as it were. And it's a lot of fun. And then the lower area, which actually is not within the monument zone, it's separate, is the Dattatreya. And this really is very much more of a sort of farmer's setting, because there's always something going on. They know how to use their public open space, and they've kept it. So we can learn a lot of lessons from Bhaktapur. Has anyone seen this before? Because I found this in my collection. And I vaguely remember seeing it hanging in one of the temples, but it's on cloth. When you look at it closely, you think, well, could this be the part of the Durbar Square? You've got all these wonderful bahals, the bahals of Patan, and these very carefully laid out public open spaces. And I'd love to know where it comes from. It could have been from the Golden Temple in there, because I know I got to know them very well, and they showed me quite a lot of their treasures, and it may be from there, but I'd be very interested to know where it is, because this actually sparked off a whole new series of ideas when I found it in my collection of slides. Everyone knows this view. Look at the changes that have been made. Are they good or bad or successful? But the difference is there is very little traffic. This is in the middle of the day, back again in probably the 80s. And Patan, it didn't go anywhere, this road. So it was, people really, I think most of the business side was up on this side, up on the south side of Patan. But I mean now it's almost impossible to drive through Patan. And so you forget about the wonderful space that you're in. And they have tried to make it pedestrian. I got to know, and my team got to know Patan very well, because we were asked to revisit the Durbar Square and come up with yet another master plan. And I said, no way. I said, we're not going to prepare another master plan, because we were handed a stack of them. And I said, what we'll do is, if you will allow us to, we'll call it an action plan. And unfortunately, I haven't got a copy with me, but It was a very nice document which was focusing on do it now, basically, trying to get the mayor in particular. We did it through, I think the GTZ gave us some funding, and it was a very practical, down-to-earth document. Nothing really has happened. And, you know, we can't, I mean, I certainly can't do very much pushing without being asked to do the pushing. Because, I mean, there was very simple, very straightforward recommendations in there that weren't costing, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they were considering the environment, the open spaces. There was a whole section on open spaces and the importance. And this, again, it's a little bit out of focus, but the area behind, I mean, how many people have actually been in there? Very, very few. I mean, most people didn't, I mean, when I showed it to them, most people had no idea where it was. But I'm told that they are working on the garden finally, which is a good step. But the whole area is a wonderful zone for people to go and wander around and enjoy a bit of greenery, wonderful architecture, get rid of the cars, and get rid of a lot of the hawkers that seem to clutter the place up. This was really just to illustrate the picture I showed before, because this actually is the Hiranavana Mahavihar, I believe, in here. And again, unless you really live in Patan, and certainly very few tourists know, that the importance of the choks, the bahals. And I remember following once one of the Buddhist ceremonies where they paid worship at all the various Buddha images, and you spend a whole day sort of crisscrossing the roads, going into these things with great pujas, and you know, that was something very special. And I mean, I then realized that when you're talking about spaces and public spaces, Patan still has those spaces. It's just a question of really controlling the development, both in traffic, because traffic really is the downfall, and to some extent construction. But I think I've passed it actually, but I remember when we set out the very first time to nominate the area for Patan Dover Square as a World Heritage Site, there was one building, one very tall white building behind the Krishna Mandir. And I said, who does this belong to? Oh, he works in the physical planning department. I won't name names. I hope he's not there. But anyway, I mean, going back... Yeah, that's right. So, well, I didn't say anything, but I mean, he's been joined by many other. These are the great festivals. I mean, the Machendra, and that keeps the spaces, the public open spaces, very open for many weeks during the summer months. And I'm hoping, I mean, every year you wonder whether it's going to happen, but I'm sure it will keep going. But these festivals really need a lot of support and encouragement, I think. And it's very much up to the younger generation, and they're really the ones that need these open spaces. Another of my favorite spaces is the Kumbhaswar. This is Kumbhaswar Temple, and I mean, this was taken before a lot of building took place in here, but it had its own space. And it's part of one of my favorite walks through Patan, linking the majority of the buildings on the historic sites on the northern side of Patan. And of course, the great festival there is the great Kumbh Mela, which brings people from everywhere into the place, and you can see, you meet every sort and kind of tribe, of clan, coming to enjoy themselves. Okay, a bit more serious now, and again another master plan, several master plans, and I'm sure a lot of you have been involved in them in some funny way. But I was very struck by this aerial, or it's actually a satellite picture, a Google picture, showing Swayambhu and actually describing the very clear outline of the forested area there. And, you know, in more or less it's maintained, the monument zone has been protected, but the terrible things that have happened around the circumference were a little worrying. I've spent quite a lot of time up in Swayambhu because you may remember there was the great landslide in this area, and one of my jobs was actually to see if we could pin it back together again. But there it is, sitting in quite a dense forest. I'm told the tree here is actually quite a special tree, Chilauni. It's the one that causes you to scratch. Very good timber. And this is just again to show you the main monument zone is the red zone, and then you've got the forested area, the green zone. And then when we were doing the putting up some proposals, what we felt was so important was to try and really establish the monument zone, and each of these are areas where there is an important temple. And unfortunately the one that has been most developed is the one on the toe. But here is a picture just before we actually started the clearance. This whole section, all the houses were pulled down, which was very sad because we could have saved them, but I was actually in England at the time. I got an email, telegram in those days, asking for me to come back immediately, and literally they gave me 2 or 3 days to come back and to set up the whole program. By that time, the old houses here had been taken down. It was a very interesting, I could spend a good half hour just telling you what we were doing, but I just wanted to show you the significance of Swayambhu on its hill. This is a plan. You see there's again an enormous amount of religious structures around it. All these little blobs are actually little chaityas. The main route walking up comes up through here, and the two Sikara. This one we did some fairly major investigations. This was the one that burnt down, and then you've got the Ajima temple over here. So a place where you will never be on your own, I think is the way I always describe Swayambhu. It's such an important religious place, and particularly amongst the Newari Buddhists. And I got to know the people up there very well, and I was